Hello, Stuart here, unrepentant atheist. Just a quick video because this afternoon I've been watching Darth Dawkins in action against Dr. Jay Garfield and Professor Stephen Law. So in a way, kudos to Darth Dawkins for getting these quite high-level professional academics to come on and actually talk to him. So that did surprise me that he's getting that amount of attention. So they're both, I think I watched clips, I didn't watch the whole thing, on Tom Rabbit website. And so we've got, so the first one, Professor Stephen Law. So obviously you know what Darth Dawkins' script is. Do you deny that there is something fundamental, the source of all possibilities, and something which is ultimate? And you know that a lot of atheists will deny that, and then we'll get to the next stage, which will be, do you agree that all the laws, physical laws in the universe are uniform? And yes, they're uniform. And then obviously we'll get down to his foundationalism argument that everything's got to have a foundation. Otherwise, the laws of physics would not be uniform, reason would not be reasonable, and logic would not be logical. And unless there's a God, you can't present a coherent worldview. So that's his case. Many presuppositionalists have presented it in a much more sophisticated way. So he uses a kind of shotgun approach, which I don't really think is very constructive, but it doesn't really seem to get anywhere. And certainly in these two debates, it didn't really get anywhere at all, because Professor Stephen Law saw very quickly what he was up to. And he said, you know, you're like a car salesman, you've got a script, can't you just forget your script and can't we have a discussion? Or if you've got a script, then read out the script and let's get it over with so we can make some progress. But they got bogged down. Professor Stephen Law just said, what do you mean by ultimate? What do you mean by... he was trying to get him to define his terms, which is what any philosopher would do before he can evaluate a proposition. Of course, the terms have got to be properly defined. So they got fairly well bogged down. It wasn't really going anywhere. Darth Dawkins was getting upset and frustrated, saying, you know, if you're an atheist, it must mean that you deny all gods, including my God. And Stephen Law says, yeah, but you're defining your God in very thin terms, whereas what you really believe in is this benevolent, all-loving God with all the rest of the baggage. Why don't we just get straight to that one and talk about what you do believe in, and not this thinned down version of a God? Actually, which I thought was a very good point, because I've noticed with Darth Dawkins, he wants to get this principle established, and that's not really the God he believes in. He believes in something which has got a lot more ornamentation to it. So this one didn't really go anywhere. I just watched a clip. I didn't watch the whole thing, and I don't know whether they got to the next stage of the discussion, but in the 15 minutes that I watched, there wasn't really any progress, because Darth Dawkins just wasn't able to properly define his terms. So on the other one, Dr. Jay Garfield with Canadian Catholic from I think I heard him on the Atheist Experience a few times. He was a bit obnoxious there, but he seemed quite reasonable here as a moderator. And he did have to put down Darth Dawkins quite a few times, because again, in this situation with Jay Garfield, Dr. Jay Garfield, is that he needed Darth Dawkins. He was confused by his questions. He seemed to be saying that his questions were not valid, and that he needed him to, he didn't understand what he meant by ultimate and fundamental. And then he got on to saying that he doesn't see any evidence for such a thing, for such a necessary being. And then Darth Dawkins accused him of an argument from ignorance, which I think was wrong. I don't think it's an argument from ignorance when you're pointing out that there's no evidence for a proposition. Argument of ignorance is when you don't know A and you're plugging B into the gap of your ignorance. Argument from ignorance. And that was not an argument from ignorance. So it looked to me like Darth Dawkins hasn't really done enough study on philosophy. He needs to learn some of these terms and what they mean. He also accused him of argument from incredulity, which again it wasn't, because he was only saying, I don't see why such a thing would be necessary. What he's asking for is for Darth Dawkins to justify that necessity. It's not an argument from incredulity. Darth Dawkins was getting very, very childish in this one. He was saying that because Canadian Catholic had to mute him once or twice when he was interrupting Jay Garfield in mid-sentence. And then Darth Dawkins said, oh, well, if you interrupt me one more time, I'm going to hang up. And it just it's striking me that there's some sort of narcissism there. He's got an over-bloated, kind of overblown sort of sense of grandiosity about himself, which is consistent with narcissists. And when he can't get his own way, he's stamping his feet and saying, oh, I'm going to hang up, and he doesn't hang up, and then 2, 3, 4 times still not hanging up. And in the end he did hang up, actually. And it didn't go anywhere because they got stuck on the terminology. He wasn't Jay Garfield was asking to define in what modality he's talking about with some of what Darth Dawkins was saying, and Darth Dawkins was just going around in circles, just repeating his script. And so I think he was talking about possibility and impossibility, and he was asking the question: is there any state of affairs which is basically impossible? Oh yeah, and then of course Jay Garfield said, "Well, what modality are you talking about exactly? Is it abstract, or is it a sort of practical, real world state of affairs?" And then Darth Dawkins presented a example, and he said, for example, is it possible for me to jump from this position to the moon right now? And Jay Garfield said, well, no, of course not, because from what we understand about laws of gravity and given your own mass, that would not be possible. And then I think that they were going to go into, well, if there's going to be impossibility, there must be a source of these impossibilities, and what is the source of these impossibilities? I could see where he was going with it, but they got into more. Jay Garfield was asking him to define more of what he meant, and in the end, Darth Dawkins just put the phone down. He vanished, and it didn't go anywhere at all. So I suppose this is what happens when somebody like Darth Dawkins comes up against people who really know what they're talking about. He's going to be exposed in a way for the charlatan that he is. And I don't think that he's worth the attention that people are bestowing upon him. I've watched him 5 times, goodness knows why. Partly because 1 or 2 of my subscribers have asked me to do more Darth Dawkins videos, but that's about it really. Have you watched those debates? Do you have anything to add to it? Because I can't really think of anything more constructive to say, only that I've seen that the presuppositionalist position, I've seen it presented in a much, much more subtle and sophisticated way. Darth Dawkins has got this script, and he's incredibly limited. He's got very poor frame of reference. He doesn't understand some basic philosophical principles and fallacies, for example. So I think that's probably going to be the last Darth Dawkins video I watch for quite some time, unless I hear that something really interesting has happened. That's all for now. If you've got anything to add, I'd be very interested to hear it. Bye for now.